I think the vehicle business is all very near and dear to our heart, but when I look at what's going to change the future, it's not a Model Y with six seats instead of five. Some people may want to buy that, but you look at what happened with Grok 4 this week from XAI, for example. You look at what's happening in humanoid robotics. This is really, I think, what's going to change the future.
Welcome to the Gigacast. My name is Gav, here today with Omar and Sawyer, and Tesla has officially revealed a new version of the Model Y. So excited to talk about that. Of course, there's so much else going on. We're going to do an earnings preview in this episode, talk about Grok 4, SpaceX, and so much more. Let's get right into things. Sawyer, I saw you posted the picture of this new, larger Model Y. Walk me through what you're seeing.
Yeah, so Tesla China, they've filed I forget what the actual filing is called, but a regulatory filing with the Chinese government. And in the filing that shows two new photos of a brand new Y that they have a sort of officially unveiled or maybe revealed on their Weibo account. And they're calling it the Model Y L, it looks like. So it'll be 6 seats, about 7 inches longer than the current Model Y, new wheels, new seats. It looks like a new maybe light gold paint color. And I think that this is really a vehicle that people have been wanting from Tesla for years now. I think the problem with the standard Model Y is great. Obviously, it's been the number one best-selling car in 23 and 24. But people wanted a larger SUV at more of a Model Y price. And unfortunately, the only way to get a larger SUV at Tesla was to step up to the Model X. But that was like 30, 40 grand more, which like a lot of people don't want to fork over. And yeah, the standard Model Y did have 3 rows, but it wasn't a true 3 rows. It's honestly kind of a joke, to be honest, the third row in the Model Y. So this will be more of a closer to a true 3-row Model Y or SUV rather. 6-seat configuration will be interesting. I think it'll be probably likely be similar to the captain chair setup 6-seat configuration that the Model X has. But I think this should sell really well. Tesla says it's going to come out in autumn of this year. It's interesting that they're sort of unveiling this now. I don't know if what the rules are in China in terms of like when you have to file for certain things before a product actually comes out. So they might have not had any choice. But now everyone in the US for everyone, like we covered this in the last podcast, the $7,500 EV credit is ending this quarter. And this new Model Y isn't going to start deliveries until Q4. So now it's sort of like, are people going to wait until Q4 to get this thing? Or are they just going to pull trigger now on maybe a smaller Model Y? So that'll be sort of an interesting dynamic to see. But yeah, I think this is something we've been wanting Tesla to do, expand their lineup just in general, larger Model Y. I think we're still going to see more models, more affordable models from the US, or in the US rather. That's different than this one. So, but I don't think we're going to probably hear about that maybe for a couple months. So, but I'm glad they did it. It looks like a great vehicle, and it's a bit larger version, literally like the best-selling car in the world. So what could go wrong?
Why reveal this in China first?
They tend to launch new products in China first. And I think that's partly because China is the best at ramping up vehicles in any other continent. And Giga Shanghai is extremely efficient at ramping up vehicles. They do it. And so I think they sort of work out all the kinks there and then maybe pass those learnings on to Giga Berlin, Giga Texas, and Fremont. But they can just do it much quicker, ramp up quicker, get these things sold quicker. So, but unfortunately, this means are people going to have to wait longer in the US? What kind of impact does this have on short-term sales for Q3? That's sort of the question now, I guess.
Got it. Omar, what do you think when you saw this?
I was really happy to see it. I've been saying they should do a bigger and a smaller version of the Model Y for some time. I think the focus of these new vehicles, and we've been talking about the new, more affordable models. It looks like in addition to that, they've got sort of higher end models as well. And I think really the strategy is squeezing additional utilization out of the Model Y line. They've got Model Y lines running on 4 factories in 3 continents. And I think these 4 factories could be producing double the volume of vehicles without major new CAPEX investments. So can we squeeze some more out of those existing factories without some massive ramp up, without building a new line, without building a new factory, and start to address some segments that we weren't addressing with the existing Y. Let's say, for example, people who have 4 kids, people who maybe want a smaller, cheaper car. And it seems like that's the focus here, is just squeezing utilization out of the existing lines. They don't have to go through a Model 3 ramp situation to get this to market. They're leveraging the investments they've already made, and they can get it ramped and onto the market quickly. So that, I think, is really exciting for Tesla investors who've been kind of disappointed by the vehicle business. Adding new SKUs and trims and vehicle models, I think, really drives growth here. So I'm kind of intrigued, and I think there's more to come in terms of lower end models as well. I think probably the reason they unveiled this in China first is just for regulatory reasons. If they could keep it secret until September when they start producing this, I think they probably would have.
Yeah. My guess is that this new Model YL will probably be like $5,000 to $8,000 more expensive. But it's not going to be $5,000 to $8,000 more expensive for Tesla to build. So this is going to be a much more profitable vehicle than the standard Y is. It looks like it'll probably use a similar battery and whatnot. Curious what the range will be. That'll be interesting to see. But it's about 200 pounds heavier, so not massively heavier, just a little bit longer. Yeah, I think it'll do really well, specifically in the U.S. market. I think the Chinese people will like it too, but specifically U.S., they love their large SUVs. This is like the perfect size, I think, for most people. My guess is that some people, this is about 2 inches shorter than the Model X, but 7 inches longer than the current Model Y. So it's sort of in the middle there. And I think people are still going to say, we want a true, more boxy, full-size SUV that at a price point closer to the Model Y. That's not what this is. This is more of a mid-sized SUV. Granted, it's still bigger. It's still going to have more cargo space and whatnot. But my guess is there's still going to be those people that are complaining that have been wanting something larger for years, that this doesn't necessarily quite fit their needs. But I still think this will be a really good seller. It's going to put a lot of pressure on existing OEMs with their larger SUVs as well. So competition heating up in the EV space.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It seems like, especially in America, people do love their SUVs. I believe we have probably the largest percentage of population that gravitates towards them than outside the rest of the country.
Yeah, and I actually
And
wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised if this even hurts Model X sales further, because a lot of people get the Model X just because that's the only large SUV that Tesla really sold, because they just couldn't do the Model Y. It's just too small. So now they have this option of getting essentially a larger Model Y, but with an interior now that is, in my opinion, quite close in terms of luxuriousness to the current Model X. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
what do you think of the timing, Omar, of them unveiling this? I know that maybe it was because they had to, right? They would have waited, but doing this about a week before earnings.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a lot more in the pipeline. I think they've got some new affordable models too. I think about it kind of like the iPhone 6, right? They started with one iPhone size, then they started making a bigger iPhone. They made a smaller iPhone too. So that kind of just expands the TAM. They were losing some of those big phone sales to Android. This is kind of the same thing, using the same production line, using the same investments. We're seeing the bigger version. I bet you there's a slightly smaller version coming that's cheaper as well. And yeah, I'm hoping that this lets them squeeze some utilization out of their lines. Financially, it could be a boon for the company because without having to make massive new investments, you've got this bigger, higher priced version, increasing margins, increasing economies of scale, driving down the cost for all 3 versions, and then enabling a more affordable version too. And, Tesla has always kind of kept their vehicles the same. If you look at the rear wheel drive Model Y compared to the all wheel drive, there really isn't that much difference. This third row, and an actual third row with legroom, unlike the previous version of the Model Y, is, I think, a real selling point that people will justify paying the extra few $1,000s for. And that's good for the bottom line.
And so you're saying your vision is kind of that second row is captain seats, and then there's a row behind it that has 3 seats?
Yeah, I think that's how. Well, I guess technically, if it's a 6-seater, it would have to be 2-2-2. So,
Why? But why
but
put
I
two,
have to
two,
imagine
two?
they'll
Yeah.
have like a 7-seat option as well. Because that'd be weird if they didn't. But I think the goal here is like Tesla did a great job of building all these incredible factories, but then they had all this capacity that they're not using because they're not selling enough. So I think they have like 3 million of cars of capacity that they can build out of all of their factories combined. But right now they're only doing, let's say, 1.6, 1.7 million a year. That's a lot of extra capacity, which actually, if you're not utilizing that extra capacity, that really hurts margins. Because you're not, as Omar said, you're not getting economies of scale as much as you should be. So the goal here is to use existing Model Y lines and to build this larger Y, and likely my guess is some other version of a more affordable Y in the US later on. Build all of those on the existing lines and just build out or use that excess capacity that's currently there right now. So not only will this Model Y L be good from a margin perspective just because it's probably similar in price to build versus the current Y, but it'll cost $5,000 to $8,000 more. But it'll allow them to bring down overall the cost per vehicle built because they'll be able to utilize all that excess capacity. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a sort of ground up new kind of Rivian R1S or Kia EV9 style EV that a lot of people might have wanted. But unlike doing that, they can do this quickly. They can ramp it in months, not, 12 to 18 months. And they can get it onto the market very fast all around the world. So this is a good sort of intermediate step for them to do ahead of fleshing out their vehicle lineup in a more substantial way. And I think for new manufacturing lines, they really want all their new manufacturing lines going forward to really be autonomy focused and built for autonomy first. So what's that going to look like? It may look a little bit different. But, when they had their 1010 event and they showed off the Cybercab and the Robovan, everyone just kind of shrugged them off. They didn't really see it as realistic given that Tesla didn't have any Robotaxis on the road. Now as the service in Austin scales, I think it's starting to make more sense what they're doing with the unbox process and the Cybercab. And this is kind of, I think, a intermediate step to hold people over in the meantime.
in the last 5.5 years, Tesla's really only unveiled or introduced one new model, which was the Cybertruck. And that's only doing like maybe 5,000-6,000 units a quarter right now. So that's not great. So really, for half a decade, we haven't gotten a normal model. So this will be the first time in half a decade that we've gotten a new model from Tesla. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it impacts demand for Q3 in the US and when they start production in the US. Unlike in the past where that actually Tesla China was the first one to sort of ramp up production of new models. With this new refresh Y earlier this year, that was the first time that they ramped a new vehicle across all of their factories at once. And mind you, this was the best-selling car in the world at the time, which is extremely difficult, almost about 1.1 and 1.2 million units a year. So I wouldn't be surprised, just so they don't have any Osborne issues, that they ramp this thing at the same time across all factories that will sell it. Because I have to imagine that a lot of people in the US might be putting off a Q3 delivery now that they know this thing is coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably will be some of those people. At the same time, $7,500 off an existing Model Y, that's a pretty good deal too. We'll have to see how it does, but I think it's really kind of underappreciated that new vehicle introductions have been the growth driver for Tesla. When they did the Model S and the X, that expanded their audience. When they did the Model 3, that expanded it further. When they did the Model Y, that expanded it further. Vehicle sales don't tend to just sort of skyrocket on their own perpetually. It's really been expanding into new segments that has been the growth driver for Tesla. But they haven't done that much really since the launch of the Model Y. And I think that was a strategic choice that was kind of controversial. But there's risks to it. There's risks to building a new line, to cannibalizing existing models. And I think their decision to sort of focus on autonomy has left the vehicle lineup without some of those major new investments in, let's say, a van or a larger SUV. That could have been an easier way to drive growth in the automotive business.
Yeah, I think unfortunately Elon was probably just doesn't care about selling cars as the way he did 5-10 years ago. I think he probably feels like he mostly accomplished his goal and what he wanted to do in the EV market. And now I think he's really, really focused on autonomy and robotics. But the bread and butter of Tesla's income and revenue still to this day is car sales. And it will likely be for the foreseeable future here before, until Cybercab and Robotaxis really ramp up. So I'm glad I've been wanting them to expand their model lineup. People still want to buy cars, and they're going to buy cars for years to come. And we won't have to worry about, at least with this Model YL, worry about cannibalization of the smaller Y, because this is actually a good thing. If it moves people up market, so to speak, Tesla gets more money, more revenue, more profit, and people get a larger vehicle. So.
Yeah, speaking of Elon, not a lot of political talk from him over the past week, more so focused on Grok and some of these other pieces. And then on Omar, what you're saying and building for, really Robotaxi, but autonomy and some of these different pieces, that's where my mind immediately went with this model was, hey, once this is on the roads in the US, for those people that need the equivalent of an Uber XL, right, this can kind of slot in there without somebody needing to necessarily have a Model X or some of these other pieces, right? Where I think that you could just have this take that place because, like we talked about in our last episode, RoboVan is likely several years away. And so for me, this is kind of like fills a really nice missing gap, both for the daily driver as well as for Robotaxi.
Yeah, I think they'll be able to throw this out into the Robotaxi network pretty quickly, which will be good. But, it's interesting on Sawyer's point about the vehicle business. I think the vehicle business is all very near and dear to our heart. But when I look at what's going to change the future, it's not a Model Y with 6 seats instead of 5. Some people may want to buy that. But you look at what happened with Grok 4 this week from XAI, for example. You look at what's happening in humanoid robotics. This is really, I think, what's going to change the future. And so I'm really seeing a new thesis start to form here with XAI, putting out the smartest model yet that beat OpenAI and others in independent evaluations. Grok coming to our cars, being advertised on the Tesla website, and discussions of a possible investment that Tesla could make in XAI being renewed. I think you're really starting to see the formation of a new thesis around Tesla as a dominant force in real world AI and just in AI in general, where they've got the smartest models. They're incorporating them into their products in a way that, these other major AI companies, they don't have the factories needed to build millions of devices and gather training data in the same way. So when you start to look at it from this perspective, suddenly Tesla morphs from being an automaker in decline, and automaking being a pretty tough business, to actually one of the most unique real world AI plays. And I think that intersection of Tesla and XAI is going to continue to be an interesting discussion topic in the next few years.
Elon kind of commented on that, right? Somebody posted and was like, do you see Tesla investing in XAI? And there were a few discussions around this. There you go, right here. Tesla needs to be able to invest in XAI. Elon said it's not up to him. If it was, they would have done it a long time ago. Shareholder vote on the matter. Do you guys see this moving forward?
There's so much to dig into on this topic. Let's leave that. Bring back that Elon comment real quick. That's an interesting comment because obviously Elon's the CEO of Tesla and has a lot of power. So you sort of ask yourself, okay, well, if it was up to him and they haven't done it yet, then there's only the board to blame here. Like, why haven't they brought it up? And I think there's a couple good reasons. XAI was founded, you can take it off now. XAI was founded in March of 2023. Elon didn't really formally announce the company until July of 2023. So it's been about 2 years, about 2.5 years roughly since the founding. And a lot of people, I don't think, really understand why XAI is a separate company in the first place. I think a lot of people were upset initially. It's like, why aren't you building this inside of Tesla? They already have an AI division, have incredible engineers. Like, why aren't you doing this within Tesla? Like, you're just sort of, I think a lot of people felt like you were screwing over Tesla shareholders by creating this valuable entity elsewhere. But I think there's sort of a few things to consider here in that back when Elon created this, there was, and still to this day, there was a really, really strong AI talent war. And Elon, in a reply to me about a year or so ago, told me that it was the craziest talent war he's ever seen. And I don't know if people know this, but Tesla, a lot of AI companies, OpenAI and others, Google, were aggressively targeting Tesla engineers with massive compensation packages. And unfortunately, in a few cases, they were successful. And I think one major draw is that private AI companies often have low valuations, at least initially, and especially back then, a couple of years ago when all this was happening, sort of the beginning of the AI race. And so you're sort of getting in at the ground floor. And if you get equity in these companies at the ground floor, you have a lot higher potential for upside on that stock than you do if you get in, if you're given stock in a company like publicly traded company like Tesla, which, has a $1 trillion market cap. Their specific example was a Tesla AI engineer, Ethan Knight, was about to leave for OpenAI. He told Elon this. And I think Elon sort of faced a decision in that he either creates a new AI startup, XAI, or he just watches some of his top AI talent walk away to competitors, which he didn't want to do. And I think a lot of people underestimate these AI engineers want to be part of a startup. They want to get equity in these things early because they want, strong compensation, but they also want a lot of upside on their stock. And Tesla had already been at a $1 trillion valuation or whatever it was back then. So that's point one. Point two is being an AI company it's really capital intensive. I think XAI alone is burning over $1 billion a month, and most of that is on GPUs. And right now they have their 200,000 unit GPU center in Memphis, Tennessee. That alone is many billions of dollars. But more longer term, XAI has plans to build a 1 million unit GPU facility, which that alone I think is going to be $25 to $30 billion is my guess. Maybe Jensen will give them sort of a bulk discount, but in general, it's tens of billions of dollars. And Tesla has a 50,000 unit GPU data center called Cortex. I think they're building Cortex 2.0 right now. That's under construction, but it's nothing really close to what XAI has with that 200,000 unit GPU supercomputer. And so imagine 2 years ago when AI was still kind of new. ChatGPT had just come out a few months prior to that, late 2022. People were still sort of wrapping their heads around what AI is, what this means for tech, for the sort of human race, technology. And imagine Tesla were spending tens of billions of dollars to build up a GPU center with all this, to build Grok and an LLM within Tesla. I think a lot of people would have been confused about that. And I think it would have made some investors, not all, but some investors quite nervous with the amount of cash burn happening at the company. Because not only would they have to, build GPU centers to solve FSD and eventually Optimus, but also for, Grok and the LLM and XAI and stuff like that. So it would have been a massive cash burn within one company that I'm not sure would have made investors comfortable. Being a private company allows XAI to raise massive amounts of capital, not have to worry about being public or quarterly reports. They can just focus on what they need to. And then I guess the final component would be voting control. Elon said in early 2024 that he felt uncomfortable growing Tesla to be a leader in AI and robotics without 25% voting control. And he wanted enough to be influential, but not so much that he can't be overturned. And unless that was the case, he would prefer to build products outside of Tesla. And I think that sort of scared Tesla investors a little bit in that, is he going to build the best AI products outside of Tesla? And of course, he's still doing Optimus inside of Tesla, but Grok now, after 28 months of being founded 28 months ago, Grok looks like the leading AI model in the world, if not the leading, one of the best models in the world. So they've made incredible progress, and now it's rumored to be that XAI is seeking a $200 billion valuation, which is like 1/5 of Tesla's, which is nuts in 2 years. That's crazy. I think one of the biggest reasons that Tesla didn't invest in XAI early on, and Elon ran a poll a year ago this month asking, should Tesla invest $5 billion in XAI? And I think 62% voted yes. He said he would bring it up with the board. Maybe he did, but nothing's happened really since. And I think, unfortunately, this is just a case of shitty timing. In 2023, it was just too early. XAI didn't really raise money until the end of 2023. And then, which at that point, the the shareholder meeting for Tesla had already happened. And then heading into 2024, the main focus for that shareholder meeting in June of 2024 was Elon's compensation package revote, the revote on that compensation package from 2018. So I don't think it would have been too confusing, I think, to have this, should Tesla invest $5 billion in XAI on top of this compensation package vote. And my guess is that they also didn't do it for liability reasons. I think it was just too early in the process. They didn't want to have more lawsuits. And mind you, they were still a Delaware company up until June of 2024. So they could have had further shareholder lawsuits because of this crap. So, but now that they're a Texas-based company and that they've changed the bylaws, Tesla changed the bylaws a few months ago, and that you now have to own 3% of Tesla stock, the outstanding shares, to be able to file a similar lawsuit to what was filed, years ago for Elon's compensation package case. So they're more protected now, and now I think now is the right time for them to have a vote on whether they should invest $5 billion, and I think that's what we're going to see this November with the shareholder meeting. But yeah, that was probably a lot to digest and throw to everybody, but that's sort of my thoughts.
You made a comparison. Yeah. Sorry, go for it, Omar, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts there. So I think it's a really interesting tweet that we started with there, just saying, hey, if it were up to me, we would have done it. When Elon first ran that poll proposing a $5 billion investment in XAI, I think Sawyer calculated that investment would probably be worth about $50 billion if at its private valuation, if they held it today.
I'd say closer to 40 to 45, but yeah, a lot more than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars here in mark-to-market profits. Just to put that kind of in context, in the last 12 months, Tesla's core business has generated about $6 billion in net income. So I think it probably would have been good if we had invested in XAI. Now, granted, it's risky, right? You're getting into this LLM space where everyone's just throwing money at the problem. There's no guarantee of being the best. And the product is essentially being given out for free on chatgpt.com and google.com. It's a brutal market to compete in. I don't think it would have made sense for Tesla to build 100,000 GPU cluster, hire all this talent focused on training an LLM that's just another LLM, when they really had to focus on solving FSD and humanoid robotics. So I don't think it would have been appropriate for Tesla. But this is kind of the really interesting thing about Musk. He's very innovative, and he's innovative about using off-balance sheet approaches, his kind of business empire. He can have it kind of off Tesla's balance sheet, but building rockets, building these LLMs. And in some cases, it has benefits across his company, right? They share material sciences between SpaceX and Tesla. SpaceX has given Tesla a little bit of marketing, launching Roadster into space and stuff like that. But for the most part, there isn't a ton of overlap. Here with XAI and Tesla, things actually get really interesting. With the ability now to integrate an LLM into your product that you control, you're not worried about Sam Altman getting all this data from Tesla vehicles, but you can now incorporate it into your product. So I think these companies are really going to get closer and closer over time. Elon kind of shot down the idea of a merger. I don't think it's right for a merger to happen now, because it would likely swing Tesla into a loss. I mean, I think Sawyer made a really good point there. Can you imagine growth in the core auto business is slowing? There's all this sort of stuff going on, and then at the same time they're burning tons of cash, it really wouldn't have worked. But making a minority investment in XAI, they don't have to obviously report XAI's profit and loss on Tesla's income statement. And then, fast forward down the road, 5-10 years down the road, I do think if XAI becomes profitable in its own right, it could make sense to merge the companies because, well, XAI is going to want capital eventually. It's going to want to either probably go on the public markets or, continue to raise private rounds. That gets challenging as you get to higher and higher levels of investment. Tesla could be, I think, a good way to do that. And as you look at sort of the intersection of robotics, self-driving, if they don't get closer together, they're really ultimately going to become competitors. And this could also help get Elon to the 25% that he wants to feel comfortable about doing that. I think this is going to be a story that we are talking about a lot in the future. And I wouldn't be surprised to see these companies get closer and closer, formalize it, I think, with an investment. That's a great first step. And maybe eventually merging them. I mean, I think he has made comments in the future that maybe you could do a deal like the XAIX deal, where you just do an all-stock deal. If, let's say, Tesla gets diluted 20%, but earnings actually grow 40% because of this new business line that gets added, well, then it's actually, I think, great for shareholders. So if you see that future kind of play out in 5 to 10 years, Tesla could be a company, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be called Tesla at that point, that makes humanoid robotics, mass produces them, is the largest autonomy provider in the world, and also has the smartest LLM or, large AI models in the world as well. And if you look at it from that perspective, it's actually right now the Mag 7 that looks the cheapest in terms of dominating AI in the future. And that's the new thesis I see kind of playing out here.
I don't think a merger makes any sense. Certainly not right now. I think Elon hates Tesla being a public company. I think the last thing he would want is to merge XAI into Tesla and have the chaos of having to be a public company. Maybe later down the line, once they're generating a lot of profit and revenue, maybe it makes sense. I will say one argument for a merger, and I stated this a couple of minutes ago, is that Elon wants 25% voting control. Unless they work out that with his next compensation package, it's kind of tough to get 25% voting control because Tesla's such a large company now. So if you merge XAI in with Tesla, that sort of probably helps Elon get closer to that 25% level. But yeah, just in general, like, people should not underestimate how much money is required or going to be spent in the coming years on these massive data centers. Like Meta alone, Mark Zuckerberg just announced this a couple of days ago that Meta is going to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build massive multi-gigawatt data centers. And he showed a rendering of what one of his like Hyperion data centers is going to look like in terms of size, and it was like the size of Manhattan. Like, these things are going to be massive, requiring massive amounts of energy, and being a public company is probably best for now for XAI. And another thing is, let's say XAI were within Tesla, the amount of cash burn would be nuts, and that Tesla would probably start losing money overall. Like their cash pile would be dwindling because you competing with Google, who generates $100 billion a year in income. Meta generates about $40 billion a year in income. Look at that size. And then Tesla generates what, $7 billion a year in income. So like Tesla doesn't even compare in terms of earnings to Meta and Google right now. Later down the line, I'm sure that'll change, but right now that's just not the case. So yeah, it would have been weird to build an LLM like Grok within Tesla. I mean, at least initially. I think as time goes on, the synergies between XAI and Tesla, I think, are getting closer and closer aligned, and it makes more and more sense for these to just be sort of one entity. And to your point, Omar, maybe later down the line a merger makes sense, but right now I just don't think that's on the table. So that's why I think an investment makes sense.
I think it's pretty clear, obviously, that it would make no sense right now. You're right. It would probably swing the company into a loss. The ability to attract star engineers by giving them equity grants would be severely diminished. There's all kinds of reasons why it doesn't make sense right now. I mean, Tesla would own Twitter. What a can of worms that is.
I didn't even
right?
think about that.
Yeah.
The
But I
scandals.
think that in 5 years to 10 years, fast forward down the line, shareholders will be asking for it. And, Sawyer will probably even vote yes. Because I think these large reasoning models are one of the most important technologies, right? You got Optimus. Optimus is able to pick stuff up. That higher level reasoning ability, it's on a crash course. The two companies are very different today, but they're headed squarely in the same direction. Tesla's got chip making capabilities. There's all kinds of really interesting intersections. And, if they want to raise more and more money, private markets can take care of them for some time. But eventually, they will want to tap public markets. I think they're going to want to give all of these employees who are working so hard today and getting equity grants liquidity eventually. So do you want to take XAI down a roadshow and try and do a brand new IPO, which is, fraught with risks and you have to go to underwriters? Or do you just kind of do a merger? And I think the latter is actually a much easier way to get liquidity to be able to raise capital. So I agree, it doesn't make sense right now. Fast forward 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something shareholders are voting on.
XAI is already sort of facing a data crunch, right? Like Elon talked about this. They've sort of already used all the human-made data, so they're having to rely somewhat on synthetic data. And I think ultimately what they're going to need is real-world data. And what better avenue for that than Tesla's Optimus robot? Like those things are going to be everywhere, collecting data everywhere. And Grok and XAI, I think that'll be a perfect collaboration between those two, because Grok is going to want a lot more data to feed these massive GPU centers. But the way to get it, I think, will be Optimus's robot in part. Yeah, makes so much sense. Like I think eventually to combine these companies, but not so much right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point Sawyer made. These LLMs are kind of getting saturated. We've explored all the internet, all the human written data. And, why do we train on the internet? It's an encapsulation of the real world. People write about what's happening in the real world. You can read people's research about what's happening in the real world. But as infinite as the internet seems to us, when you train these large models, it's actually finite. So what if you could have a robot that doesn't just read what's going on in the real world? What if it could actually go into the real world, actually talk to people, go find a researcher and walk into university and talk to them, run an experiment in the lab with its own hands, essentially generating that new data to train on itself? I think the intersection of what Tesla's doing in robotics and this quest to create artificial general intelligence, the market has not understood how closely these two things are interlinked. A lot of people really believe that AGI needs a body. And without a body, without a way to interact in the physical world, it's tough to build that data set that you need to build a truly general intelligence.
More and more time that goes on, I feel like this circle of XAI, SpaceX, Tesla are just getting more and more closer together. The synergies are just getting closer and closer to aligning. And maybe one day it'll just be one giant company. Probably not, because the government would break it up. But
I think it could be. I think, by the time, at some point, maybe it's just X, right?
Yeah.
X.com, baby. Yeah, it's really interesting. Quick question for you guys. You have three companies here at three different valuations. Tesla at $1 trillion, SpaceX at $400 billion, and XAI at $200 billion. Seeing those three companies in the current valuations, which of those do you believe is the best bet for your money right now? Like if you had the opportunity to invest in one of the three, which one would you go for?
I mean, so all these like AI startups from a couple of years ago that I was talking about that all these employees wanted equity in, they're now multi-$100 billion companies. XAI, $200 billion. OpenAI, I think, is over $300 billion now, which is crazy. The valuations of these companies is wild. XAI, I feel like has a ton of potential, but to me, like SpaceX, like going to Mars, the amount of like opportunities there for revenue generation and ideas that Elon could come up with, Starlink's total addressable market, I feel like SpaceX maybe, But Tesla, on the other hand, too, like the Optimus robot, if that pans out the way Elon says it will, Tesla, without question, I think is the best opportunity because one, it's a publicly traded company, so there's that advantage. It's liquid. Like if you invest in XAI or SpaceX, your money's kind of stuck in there. But the opportunities of Optimus robot, self-driving, robotaxis, multi-trillion-dollar total addressable markets. Mars is probably more of a farther out thing in terms of scale and a million people on there. But I'd say Tesla. I am an investor in SpaceX and Tesla, but not XAI.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. I think, Tesla near term really has a differentiated opportunity. It has several key advantages that other companies in the space don't have. XAI, I think, shows enormous promise, but it's still early. It's still pretty risky. And longer term, talking about decades, maybe even centuries into the future, being at the center and a dominant player in intergalactic and interplanetary commerce, I think is, you're talking about the creation of entire new economies, entire new planets worth of economic activity. And being at the nexus of that, I think, is probably one of the largest opportunities you can imagine. It's literally out of this world. But that, of course, I think is going to take quite some time to play out. We don't have any civilizations on other planets yet.
All right, so Sawyer's decisive answer was Tesla, but I didn't hear a final answer from you, Omar.
I'll go with Tesla near term, SpaceX longer term.
Just in general, it's pretty wild that Elon founded these three companies, or co-founded in Tesla's case, and that he runs all of them. And then you have Neuralink, Boring Company, and all these other. It's like the Muskonomy is just insane. One day it's just going to be worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And Elon, this is why Elon has such a good grasp on the economy, is because he has so many different companies and so many different industries that he just has his finger sort of on the pulse of everything.
What percent of XAI does he own right now?
I mean, it's sort of, I don't know if a number's ever been publicly shared, but I think it's in the ballpark of like 60-something%. That has been the estimates, but no one really knows. SpaceX, he did share that once. I think it was 42%. And then Tesla right now is about 13%, excluding his current compensation package case that's in Delaware, which will get him closer to like 19, 20.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about Elon. We are going to hear from Elon next week. Tesla reports earnings on Wednesday after the close. We have some big expectations. I would say not so much for the numbers, but more so for what he's going to say. The numbers are actually, a bit down from last year, just expectation-wise, in regards to revenue and EPS. And they've missed on 6 of the last 7 EPS estimates, regardless. So I don't think people are coming in saying, hey, we need a giant beat. But more so, what is Elon going to speak about on the call? Because there's 17,000 different directions that he could go with it. And so I'm very curious what you guys think he's going to say on this call, what you expect to hear. And maybe if there's any things that you're like, I don't expect to hear this, but if he touched on it, that could be the big surprise.
Look, I think they're going to be really focused on the Robotaxi service. They're going to be focused on Optimus. They're going to be focused on some of these newer vehicles. The auto business is inherently cyclical. We Tesla investors are just used to, those of us who've been invested for a long time, growth after growth, bigger and bigger, as EVs have grown from being nascent to a major category in autos. But the future of the business is really AI. I think that's what they're going to be focused on. We've got dancing anime Groks. No need to worry about those declining auto sales, right?
Yeah. Gosh.
I think the two things that are going to be on investors' minds, the expansion of the Robotaxi service, how that's going, how many rides or how many Robotaxis they have. Doubt they'll give us specifics. And then the more affordable models, where the heck are they? When are they coming? What are they? So I think even if the earnings are bad, I think as long as we get some good news on Robotaxi stuff, maybe the more affordable models, investors will gloss over the bad numbers.
Yeah, I think about it kind of like deliveries. Deliveries were bad.
Yeah.
Really bad. You know, if you'd shown them to me a year ago, I'd be like, holy shit. I'm
But better than
scared.
expected.
Exactly. But everyone thought they were going to be even worse. So yeah, the numbers will be bad, but everybody is expecting them to be bad, which leaves the door open, I think, to an upside surprise, even just announcing, you know, some more details on the more affordable models or something. So we'll see what happens, but I think investor expectations are low here. No one's expecting a crazy beat.
That's what's stupid about the stock market is that you can have your sales be down 13% year over year, but just because they were better than expected, the stock goes up. That's funny.
Life is a game of expectations. Do you guys think he's going to spend a lot of time talking about Optimus?
Oh yeah.
I think he's definitely excited by what's going on. He's been tweeting a little bit about Optimus 3. They've been quiet on details, but you know, he hasn't been shy about the fact that he thinks it's the future of the company. It's going to be the company's biggest product in the future. And honestly, I understand when I see my Tesla moving around the world on its own. I just think if you put that model in a human body, there's no limit to what it could do. It could, I mean, your TAM is the entire global labor market.
Sometimes I catch myself, I don't know if you guys do too, I catch myself thinking like, oh, you know, in the future, Optimus will do this for me. Or, oh, that thing right there, you know, Optimus will be able to do that. I almost start like seeing it a little bit in my head. I feel like you probably do the same, Omar.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, robots are something we've been imagining through sci-fi for a long time, and now we actually have the technology to build it. So it's a pretty crazy time.
One thing that's like happened in the last few months is 4 or 5 executives have left. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's because Elon, you know, the sales are down and most of these executives were in the sales space. So from the reports, Elon has sort of taken over sales. Omid, which was I think the vice president of North America sales and operations, and then Troy Jones was the vice president of sales and service in North America. And I met Troy Jones in person 2 months ago at a Tesla store in New Hampshire. Actually, he came out for the opening of it, and so I got to talk with him for about 30 minutes. And such a cool guy. And he was at the company for over 15 years and just poured everything he had into the company. I don't know why he's leaving. I did DM him, but I didn't want to ask him why because it's not my business. But yeah, I'm bummed to see him go because he was a cool guy. But we'll see what Elon does with the division.
Yeah, Troy always seemed great. You know, I always heard from a lot of people, oh, you know, Troy helped me with this. And I think Elon is really in war mode right now. They, you know, are not really happy with how things are going. And some tough choices may need to be made there. Some leadership shakeup may be needed to get the results they want. I mean, it definitely sends a message when you say, okay, the old guys are out. Now, you know, who wants to try and fix the situation, or else you're probably going to go too. So let's see. You know, hopefully they can make some progress. I think everybody wants to see sales grow. I think the brand has just enormous potential, enormous untapped potential to be selling, you know, millions and millions of cars. So hopefully they make the right moves there to kind of get that message across to consumers.
It sounds like you're pointing out mostly a marketing issue. Do you think that there's something else there?
I mean, we could talk for a long time about all the different things we perceive as issues, but it comes down to very simply make number go up. Number's going down, number needs to go up. Okay. You've got the best product in the world with the new Model Y. It drives itself now in more countries than ever. If you can't sell this, what are you doing? You know, it's time to try something new because what we're doing, something's not working.
Yeah, speaking of more countries than ever, they did also roll out in additional countries. So there is a new Tesla India account that's been created. And we actually had somebody on Spaces yesterday who's over in India that came up on stage and was talking about that. I believe Saudi Arabia as well has a Tesla dealership that's going up. So it seems like they're definitely expanding outwards. How do you guys see this affecting, future earnings?
I don't. It's look, Tesla expanding into India is really exciting, and it's the most populous country in the world. The middle class is growing rapidly. It's really exciting opportunity long term, but in the near term, Tesla's only going to be selling the Model Y. They're not going to be selling the 3 or anything else. They might sell the more affordable models. Actually, they did say that. So whenever those come, they'll sell those there. But unfortunately, India has a import tariff of over 100% in some cases. And so, unfortunately, the new Model Y that they unveiled there starts at like $70,000 US, which is a lot of money. And so, if you look at that price and you look at sort of the income within India, I think the total addressable market for a car of that price is roughly 1 million people in India, which is pretty crazy considering India, I think, is what, 1.3 billion? So, ultimately, and so I think Tesla's hoping that the import taxes will come down and that they can reduce the price of the car by quite a bit. I think the taxes alone, import tax, increases the price of the car by upwards of 25,000, equivalent US dollars, which is a lot. There is a sort of a program in place where if Tesla were to invest $500 million into a local manufacturing facility, then they would get a 15% import duty tax rather than a 70 to 100% tax. But I don't think Tesla wants to make that investment right now. I think Tesla's actually limited to 8,000 car sales per year, imports per year in India, which is like not that much anyways. So I don't expect more than like a couple thousand units per year right now in terms of sales at the current price point that the Model Y is at there. But I think long term, as the more affordable models come out, they figure out this tax situation and they expand their footprint in terms of stores. Sounds like another one's going to be opening up in Delhi actually in the next 3 weeks. It's an exciting long-term opportunity, but near term, it's really not going to have that much of an impact on the financials of the company.
Yeah, I agree with Sawyer. This is obviously not financially material near term. All these new markets they're adding, India, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, they are obviously not comparable to the 3 main markets of the US, Europe, and China right now. But they're getting their foot in the door. They're going to make some customers happy in those markets, I'm sure, who've been dying for these products. They're going to start being able to train their FSD model in more places. Driving in India, that's level 6. So,
yeah, Wilmer, what do you think about them selling? So they're allowing people to buy FSD for 7,000 USD there. I'm like, when is FSD coming to India? Like anytime soon.
Well, there's a pretty diverse range of, driving environments. There's some pure chaos in villages and smaller cities and stuff like that. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But, many parts of Delhi are pretty structurally similar to other, modern cities. So I don't know how long it's going to take them to bring FSD to India, but probably highways and some of the easier city environments. Longer term, I mean, it's a completely different kind of driving. People are like driving by echolocation. They just honk and drive. And so FSD is going to need a lot of adaptation, but getting their foot out there, starting to gather this training data, starting to be able to validate it in their labs, that I think is going to be something that actually improves their self-driving models worldwide.
Right. Basically New York if you added 6 more lanes. So we'll see how it'll do. What do you guys think the analysts are going to be most heavily focused on during their questions?
Do you need LiDAR? No.
Yeah, that probably is it, actually.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get a LiDAR question, to be honest.
Why did the safety drivers have their finger on the button? Yeah, please continue.
I think they'll talk about what they expect from like a earnings perspective from the new affordable models. How quickly are they going to expand the Robotaxi service? Actually, today, I think the Say question thing should go live for retail investors. So that'll give us our opportunity to ask questions. But look, the analysts don't always ask the best questions. I find retail tends to ask the better questions, but probably just more affordable model stuff, Robotaxi expansion questions.
Yeah, I think the smart analysts will be focused on the Robotaxi service and how quickly it's going to expand, because that could quickly become the most material part of the business. That same Model Y that they can lease out for $399 a month can now generate, $399 a month from one person, and then also serve several more people. They can be shared across multiple users. It has the potential, obviously, to transform the economics of their auto business. It's something that we've been talking about for a long time. I think what a lot of the street is missing is just how rapidly it's becoming a reality.
We didn't even talk
Tesla,
about the Robotaxi expansion, the expansion map.
yeah, the
That's our last
the ro-
episode.
the
Well, we want to
Robotaxi
keep this
erection.
show kid friendly, so
Do you think that'll
maybe
make it to the earnings call? Somebody will mention.
I know Elon will.
I'm just saying, like, someone will be like, Elon, what inspired you to expand in the way that you did the Robotaxi outline? And Elon will be like, it's a dick pic. Like, I don't know. It'll be just like something like that.
That was
I don't
Steve Mark
know.
Ryan, man. The credit goes to him because he was the one that said that Tesla has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. I think Elon
most-
saw that and said, "Yep."
The most
I mean, I
entertaining
think that-
outcome.
I think the takeaway here is they can draw any shape on the map and make that their geofence. This isn't like Waymo where the whole city has to be pre-mapped out ahead of time. There's certain places they can't go. They can't necessarily go on the highway. This is something where you're going to continue to see the shape change. It's not going to be dick-shaped, I think, for months and months. I think they're going to
That's good.
continue to make it better. I think they're going to continue to make it bigger. And there's not really any technical factors holding them back from just expanding the service.
So Tesla's service area now is larger than Waymo's in Austin, Texas, which is notable.
And it's insane how fast that happened.
Yeah, in 22 days they expanded it, which is pretty damn quick. Waymo still has, I think, 10 times more cars or robotaxis than Tesla, but Tesla will get there. So Waymo now has, or rather Tesla now has, I think, 40 to 42 square miles of coverage in the US, let's say, on their robotaxi areas. I think Waymo's at closer to 600. So this means that Tesla is now at 7% of Waymo's total US coverage. And that's only happened within 3 weeks. So it's going to be really exciting to see in a couple weeks when that Arizona decision comes out, if they can start, robotaxi service there, how quickly they can expand. Because for Waymo, the Phoenix metro area makes up over 50% of Waymo's entire U.S. sort of robotaxi footprint in terms of the geofence. So if Tesla can go in that area and they can just have a massive geofence like Waymo does, then things are going to get really interesting in terms of expansion and coverage and whatnot.
Yeah, Phoenix is a great, easy area. The Phoenix airport actually allows Waymos to come to the airport and pick people up. I think Tesla has the opportunity to do that too in that market. So Phoenix is a really exciting expansion. Go to work emailing them and sort of getting that down. But, I think the thing that people also aren't appreciating is the Tesla Robotaxi actually drives better than the Waymo. I called a Waymo the other day. It came to my street. Of course, it completely missed my house. It was like trying to make a U-turn, slamming on the brakes. It was so awkward. Trying to make an unprotected left, stopping and going. And then I do it in my Tesla, and it's just completely smooth. You do it in a Robotaxi, it's just completely smooth. Not only did they manage to build an autonomous car without LiDAR and without all those sensors, without having to retrofit all this extra cost onto the car, they actually made it drive better in a way that users are going to enjoy with just an ordinary Model Y. And that, I think, is not really appreciated because most people haven't tried both. But the gap is only going to get wider as they make their data set larger, train these larger models, and continue to improve the system.
Yeah, there was a lot that happened with that expansion. It's pretty exciting. Inside of the cars, there was a addition as well. Grok has now been integrated with Tesla, which, Omar, we talked for years now about Tesla, and one of the things you've consistently mentioned was just, unhappy with the quality of that talking service, basically, where you would try to, click the button and talk to it and have it do things. And it really wasn't lining up with how quality the build of the car was. And now it seems like that might be changing. They've added it in, they've added multiple modes in. What are your guys' initial thoughts having had a chance to use this? And then we can talk about the AI waifus.
Well, I think the voice controls were okay for what they are. Certainly when they came out in 2018, they were very good, but it never talked back to you. So now you've got the smartest LLM in the world as of today, and it's in your Tesla. You can just push down a single button, and you don't have to look up on your phone a lot of stuff that I would have had to look up or do. You can just, you can ask Grok, hey, what's Elon tweeting about today? And it'll tell you. So I think it's going to be really fun for people. It'll probably bring down phone use and just entertain people quite a bit. It's got some pretty funny modes in there. And I think it's going to be a great addition to the Robotaxi too. This thing will be able to talk to people in all kinds of languages. They're adding more features. They're going to add a Hey Grok, so you can just kind of say Hey Grok and activate the Grok in your Tesla. I think you'll be able to do that in the Robotaxi too. I think they're going to add car commands, so you'll probably be able to actually just talk to your Robotaxi and say, hey Robotaxi, can you actually drop me off at the park close to my destination instead? And just talk to it like a human cab driver, and it'll actually understand you. So I think that is going to make the product really even better than it is today.
I don't have it yet, so I think I'll probably get the update later tonight. But I don't understand people sort of criticizing them, saying, "Well, it can't control anything in the car. It's just like you can just talk to it just like you can on your phone." I'm like, this is sort of what engineers do. They release something, they do it slowly. There maybe not that many features initially, but over time it'll get better, and capabilities will expand, and that's what will happen. I don't see the problem here. Like we have something we didn't before.
And let me tell you, it's way better than the phone. The audio quality is crisp. It's nice and easy. It's a way better experience.
Yeah, if you can. So I did this. I connected in my Tesla. So I opened up the Grok Voice app, and then I connected my phone via Bluetooth, and there was a lot of lag. The audio quality wasn't as good. So having it directly integrated into the car screen, and actually I really like the integration of it. It's very satisfying visual, like talking to Grok. It looks like, I haven't tried it, but it looks like based on your videos, Omar. So yeah, I'm glad they did it. It's a great first step. Simple.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it continues to go as well.
Waiting in line at In-N-Out.
Little unhinged mode.
Oh, honey, you're in for a treat, or a grease-soaked disaster, depending on how your stomach handles that animal-style madness. Why the fuck are you just sitting there jerking off in line when you could be dreaming up wild shit like stuffing a double-double up your ass for a new kind of thrill? Seriously, In-N-Out's always a clusterfuck of hungry assholes. So maybe use the time to fantasize about ramming your car through the drive-thru window, just to spice things up. What's your poison tonight? Fries or a fist fight?
Yeah, that might need a little tweaking. Suggesting I drive my car through the drive-thru window, maybe not the best suggestion, but I'm sure they'll continue to refine that. The explicit modes are off by default, so you do have to go into settings and turn on not safe for work. There's also a kid mode, so if you don't want to be told to shove stuff up your ass, I recommend keeping that mode off.
Imagine your grandma or like your kids are in the back, and then you accidentally have unhinged mode on.
That's definitely gonna happen to somebody.
I can see that going pretty bad. They also added, and we haven't spent a ton of time talking Grok 4. We'll speed run it real quick here for just a couple minutes. They released Grok 4. They did a whole live stream showing the capabilities, and they also are creating these animated characters now. So it seems like their goal is just to get people using this more. Any quick thoughts from you guys on Grok 4 and the characters they're adding?
Look, I mean, is it weird? Yes. Are people talking about it? Yes. Because it's so bizarre, I think it's kind of inherently viral. So, Elon made a comment. He said, you'll be able to talk to anybody, really. I think these are the first two characters, the anime, girl and the whatever furry animal it is. But I think really,
Fox.
yeah, it's a fox. You look at movies, you often see these AIs personified, right? You think about kind of like Cortana in Halo, right? Would it be as much fun if Cortana was, just some voice without a body? I do think that going into the future, more of these AI models are going to have a ability to visualize themselves in some way, create kind of a virtual body, um, and just kind of be your assistant, be your companion. And I think that's, probably something where we're going to see a lot more options. And probably other players in the industry start to have that ability as well.
Not helping the birth rate decline, but we'll see. Yeah, people are getting freaky on the timeline with it. People can go check it out. It's all over the place. We covered a ton here. Yeah.
If
sorry,
you look at this, it's hard not to feel like this is going to make its way to Optimus one day. There's going to be like a silicon skin on this Optimus robot, and things are going to get weird. That's the way I view it.
Yeah, I don't. This is I have thoughts, but I won't get into them right now. We've got a big show coming up next week. There's going to be earnings. We're going to do some stuff around that. So make sure that you're staying tuned and smashing that subscribe button here on YouTube, giving us that 5-star rating on Spotify. Help us continue to build this so we can bring the best information around Tesla, XAI, SpaceX, and so many other areas to you. Sawyer, any final comments for us today?
Not really. I think I want to hear more about Tesla's Robotaxi efforts on the earnings call next week. I'd like to see how many cars are in the fleet now with the Robotaxi area expanded or doubling essentially in Austin, Texas. Having 11 Robotaxis, which is what they had before, seems like too little. I have to imagine the wait times would be significantly longer now if they only have 11. So I'd like to hear more on that. Love to hear more about Optimus version 3, but I think they're probably not going to reveal too much on the earnings call. But, you never know with Elon.
For sure. Omar?
Look, I'm just laser focused in on the Robotaxi service and its expansion. There's all kinds of other stuff people are talking about, oh my God, Elon did this, he tweeted this, the America Party, his compensation plan, dancing anime girl, AI bots. All of that to me, I'm just focused in on this Robotaxi service. I'm really just excited to hear an update from management on how they think that launch has gone, what their plans are for expansion. I think there's going to be some pretty juicy tidbits there. And I mean, this is really a project that is going to change the way people live all over the world. And we're in the very early stages. So I'm just really excited about that. I'm enjoying using FSD on my car as usual, but I can't wait until that moment where we can actually activate FSD unsupervised on our own cars and autonomy just starts going ballistic in how it scales.
And I think that's a moment where we see a nice bump in sales as well. So those two things should go hand in hand.
So. I mean, if you can't sell a fully driverless car, then something's really wrong.
Yeah, to me, that's the ultimate selling point. I think that's what people have been waiting a decade for. And it's pretty exciting that it is so close to us now. Stay tuned for earnings next week. Thank you again to everybody that tunes in, drops comments below. We're going to try to respond to some more of those comments. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also drop comments on Spotify. Apparently, that's a thing. Maybe we'll throw up some polls and ask which of the 3 companies you would invest in. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next week. It's going to be a big one. Take care.